And let's stay on that theme.
Let's stay on the deep state topic, because this is astonishing. Let's go ahead and throw this tear sheet up on the screen. This is from Yahoo News. So the CIA under Trump and led by Mike Pompeo apparently were floating plans to kidnap or even assassinate Julian Assange. Let me just read you the leading paragraphs here. They say in 2017, as Julian Assange began his 5th year holdup in Ecuador's embassy in London, the CIA plotted to kidnap the WikiLeaks founder, spurring heated debate among Trump administration officials over the legality and practicality of such an operation. Some senior officials inside the CIA and the Trump administration even discussed killing Assange, going so far as to request sketches or options for how to assassinate him. Discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange occurred, quote, at the highest levels of the Trump administration, said a former senior counterintelligence official. There seem to be no boundaries. I want you just to think for a moment about how completely insane this is. Number one, why are they so angry at Assange? Because he exposed their secrets and they wanted revenge. I mean, this was personal. If you read this, a lengthy piece, if you read through it, you come to realize, I mean, this wasn't about any concern about, oh, our people might be put at risk or any of that. Total bullshit. The spin that they try to tell you about how American service members or whatever are put at risk. No, they were furious. It was personal and they wanted revenge. So think about what they're contemplating here. They were actively floating and considering scenarios that involved like gunfights on London streets to take this guy out, either to kidnap him through rendition or to actually murder him. The level of insanity, psychopathic behavior, the level of arrogance to think you could just craft something like this and execute it is mind-blowing. And it shows you the way that these people operate. There is nothing that is out of bounds here.
Well, what's even more troubling, too, is about all of what it ended up justifying. It's a lot like January 6th, what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Which is that among the journalists that U.S. officials wanted to designate as, quote, information brokers were Glenn Greenwald, columnist at The Guardian, Laura Portier, a documentary filmmaker. Now, the reason why, and this is a former official who talked to Yahoo said, is WikiLeaks a journalistic organization, are Laura Portier and Glenn Greenwald truly journalists. We tried to change the definition, and I preached this to the White House and got rejected. Now, this is very important because this is actually something Glenn points to all the time, which is that if the National Security Division of the Justice Department can go after Assange for what he did, which was essentially help leak classified information, many journalists could then be subject to the same rules. Now, remember, what he did there in terms of Chelsea Manning was he spoke to her and he's like, hey, here's how you get the documents to me. That's something, though, that journalists put on their page. They'll be like, here's my, PGP key, or like, here's how to contact me via Signal, whatever. That then could be construed under the same law, technically, as a conviction of Assange that could come. And they exactly point to the fact that the intelligence community were trying to designate Glenn and other journalists not as journalists specifically so they could go after them and subject them to the different types of spying protocols that we would use against an enemy. This is the problem that we have, which is that once you start to go down this road, you can begin to see how it all becomes very slippery. And then you can have a situation where the Trump administration, once again, who benefited more from WikiLeaks? I mean, in some ways, like they owe part of their victory, at least, to some of these email leaks, which is fine by me, actually. I think the information should come out and I think that's important. But you put all of that together, and it was very clear that this was a slow-moving truck within the CIA, that the Trump administration basically gave the CIA a total carte blanche. They're like, hey, do whatever you want. And Pompeo was very much on board with that agenda, and they greenlit some very, very, I mean, this is almost like assassinate Castro level of craziness.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at this, I mean, this is London. Like what, the Brits are gonna be totally chill with us assassinating somebody, or kidnapping somebody on their soil and doing a rendition to a friendly country? We put all of this behind us in the Bush administration for good reason, in my opinion. And you go and you look at the conduct here that at least was being contemplated Trump put out a statement last night. He goes, "It never happened. I actually think Assange was treated very badly."
Then why
never
didn't you pardon him?
Right.
Why did you and not just did you not pardon him, but it was you all are the ones who went after him. They track it's interesting because they track the view of Assange throughout the Obama presidency and the way it changed, and then throughout the Trump presidency. And Obama originally, they had their own press freedom issues, aggressively prosecuting leakers and all of that, and whistleblowers. But they were worried about this distinction that you're talking about. Like, well, what makes WikiLeaks different from any other journalistic outfit?
Exactly.
How can we possibly draw this line? So initially, they were actually pretty cautious. They were worried. They didn't indict him for the entirety of the Obama administration because they were worried about this distinction. Then, once you have the Edward Snowden revelations, well, then they start to take the gloves off. Then they start to say, listen, any sort of basically covert activity, spying, all of that, we're pretty much okay with. So they ramp up the aggressive tactics in terms of the surveillance of Assange. Then when Trump comes into office, it's really gloves off. They consider all of this insanity, kidnapping him. They were obsessed with the idea that he was going to flee to Russia. And so they were even planning, like, should we engage in gunfire on the streets with Russian operatives, if that's on the streets of London? Again, like, this is what they're considering. And apparently putting forward sketches and plans as to how you could actually murder him, considering things like, well, what if we ran his car off the road? Would that work? What if we poisoned him was another thing that they considered, okay? Total insanity. There's also a very revealing line here where they were like, some of the people who were, the wise hands and the level heads in the room were like, well, this isn't like Pakistan or Egypt. We can't just do whatever we want because it's London, which also is very revealing about the way they treat, people and governments in other parts of the world. But that was apparently part of the reticence. So the compromise position was to take this aggressive legal approach towards Assange, which led to his indictment over what you're talking about, which is they allege that he helped Chelsea Manning hack to get these documents, something that Assange and his family and his legal team certainly denies. But then they layer on top of that what's even more dangerous, this espionage charge.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what they're trying to get him extradited from the UK right now to face those charges. So that was the compromise position. But obviously, not only did Trump not pardon him, but extraordinarily aggressive in going after him. The level of surveillance also, let me find this quote from this piece that he was subjected to. They said there wasn't anyone within a 3-block radius. Who was it? Intelligence. It got to the point where every human being in a 3-block radius was working for one of the intelligence services, whether they were street sweepers or police officers or security guards. They also infiltrated the security company that was working at the Ecuador embassy. So they had eyes on him every moment of the day. And again, for what? For the crime of journalism, for the crime of exposing war crimes, for the crime of exposing the rigging that the DNC was doing. I mean, ultimately the thing that they were really pissed about was the release of documents related to what they call Vault 7, which is these sort of like CIA tactics and tools. That was what pissed the intelligence community off, apparently more than anything else. But ultimately, this was all about revenge. And the last thing I'll say here is, it is insane, it is outrageous, it is unconscionable that the Biden administration has continued this Trump prosecution of Julian Assange. The Obama administration had it right when they decided we cannot indict this guy, we cannot charge this guy because we will be criminalizing journalism. The fact that Kamala Harris and Tony Blinken and Joe Biden all feel free to go out there and pretend like they care about freedom of the press when you are trying to send Julian Assange to prison for the crime of exposing secrets and doing journalism is shocking, it is unacceptable, and it is something that people need to be reminded of every single day.
Yeah, it really is hilarious. What they really mean by freedom of the press is freedom for Jim Acosta and the White House press corps. Like real journalists like Glenn or even and Assange under this definition.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
they'll get so upset about, a mean tweet and, this person was unfairly targeted or whatever. And like, look, it's not nice when people are mean to journalists, but that is nothing compared to what Glenn has been through and certainly they have destroyed this man.
Yeah,
They have aggressively sought to utterly destroy this man up to and including literally trying to murder him. Insane.
There we go.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.